Good evening, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. As you start to come in, we're going to ask you to complete a survey. So you will see a QR code come up on the screen, but I will also place it in the chat as well. Once again, good evening. We're going to get started shortly. On the screen, you can also take a picture to take the survey from the QR code. Once again, thank you for joining us. Good evening, everyone. As you are entering, we ask that you complete a brief survey by either clicking the QR code, taking a picture of the QR code, or clicking the link that is coming in the chat. All right, good evening, everyone. We are so grateful that you were able to join us tonight for our Health is Wealth webinar series 2.0. For those of you that joined us last year, we are very grateful for you to return again. And for those of you that are new, welcome. So we are kicking off this series, which will take place every Monday in the month of February with our No Pressure. So I'm going to pass the mic over to my co-director, Dr. Siobhan Chambers Williams, and she will introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I am Dr. Siobhan Chambers-Williams, and I have the privilege of serving alongside Crystal for our third year as we promote the All of Us research program. So as Crystal mentioned, if you were here last year, we were so fortunate to have Dr. Julius Johnson speak along Dr. Patterson over the 3 Ps: prenatal, post-pregnancy, and postpartum. And so tonight, we're switching it up and we're talking about no pressure, healthy heart. But before he comes with some great information, let's tell you a little bit about him. Dr. Julius Johnson was born and raised in the Republic of Brooklyn, New York, primarily in the Brownsville and Crown Heights neighborhood. He attended Clara Barton High School for Health Professionals while starring in football for the Brooklyn Seahawks. He received his Bachelor's of Science with a major in nursing from Binghamton University in 2005. He also received his Master's of Science with a major in Family Nurse Practitioner, also from Binghamton University in 2009. And then he traveled down south to the University of Miami, where in 2016, he received his doctorate of nursing practice. He currently specializes in home-based primary care and transitional care. He has spent the past 12 years serving underserved communities and reducing hospital rates for at-risk populations. He is a founding member of the Greater New York City Black Nurses Association and currently serves as the president. He is also the founding president of the Omega Nu chapter of Sigma Theta Tau International Honor Society at Long Island University, Brooklyn. He is an assistant professor and director of the Family Nurse Practitioner at Long Island University, Brooklyn. In 2018, he was recognized as one of the National Black Nurses Association's 40 Under 40 Rising Stars. In his spare time, how, I don't know, but he serves as the defensive coordinator of the Brooklyn Skyhawks, who are the current 12 and under back-to-back defending champions of the New York City Youth Football League. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome Dr. Julius Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Chambers-Williams, for that great introduction. I'm loving the Republic of Brooklyn. And if you're a fellow Brooklynite, you understand why we're saying that. So pretty much, I'm happy to be here with everybody to talk with you all about the healthy heart, and also to talk with you all about All of Us research. As much as I kid and say that having your profile read at the beginning of speaking is kind of like having the birthday song loop over and over, I do understand that it is important for people to understand who's in front of you giving you this advice. Because a lot of times, sometimes we get advice from people who either haven't been through it or don't have experience treating the communities that they're standing in front of. So I wanted to talk with you all about healthy heart and heart disease and high blood pressure, but I also want this to be interactive. So I'm going to be looking in the chat constantly. So I would like for you to throw in questions. I know you're not able to unmute yourself and talk, but if you can throw in questions in the chat so that I can answer as I ask you all questions and ask you all for engagement. So interesting enough, Dr. Chambers and I, we were talking about high blood pressure, especially during COVID and heart disease, and wondering why. She was asking me why so many more people are being diagnosed with high blood pressure, why? And what I was explaining to her in the conversation we had was that there's a lot of things that causes high blood pressure, right? So a lot of times people think that it's just genetics. Your mother had it, so the child will have it. The grandparents have it, so the grandkids will have it as well. And one of the things I like teaching my students and also teaching people in our communities that we grew up in is don't just look at the disease and the family members that have it. Look at the environment that they grow up in. That's first of all, right? So give you an example. I grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn, as well as Crown Heights. So in the area I grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn, which Brownsville being the largest blocks of projects in the entire country. So it's this huge project block. And then at the corner of our block, right, just a matter of fact, on one side of the corner, You have two bodegas, which are corner stores, which don't have the healthiest of food options. Two Chinese stores, Kennedy Fried Chicken, another fast food place, a liquor store, a cleaners. And then you have to walk about a block and a half to get to the supermarket, which doesn't have the healthiest of options as well. So people grow up in these neighborhoods where you just don't have access to healthy food. And that's a big problem. Then another thing that sometimes happens is I teach at LIU Brooklyn, which is downtown Brooklyn. And if any of you have been to downtown Brooklyn in the recent years, it looks like mini Manhattan. But if any of you have been to downtown Brooklyn, and it's right across the street from where Julius is, if you were there in the 90s, early 2000s, there was no skyscrapers at all. And all you see now is skyscrapers. However, there's also huge project complexes on the other side of LIU Brooklyn. So people technically live within proximity to all of these food options, like Trader Joe's and healthy options. However, the people who live in the skyscrapers, their median income is somewhere like $250,000 to $500,000. The people who live in the projects, their median income is less than $20,000. So everybody lives next to Trader Joe's, but everybody can't go shopping at Trader Joe's. Because if I have to go buy something at Trader Joe's and one item is $5, but the McDonald's down the block costs $4 to buy a number 2 with 2 cheeseburgers, and that can feed me, chances are I'm going there if all I have is less than $20,000. So understanding some of those concepts. And then also understand food choices that we eat when you do have the ability to do it. And then a conversation that we did have that was very interesting was during COVID, right? So one of the theories of what causes high blood pressures and what causes stress is being extensively under stress, right? So we heard of flight versus fight when we was growing up in school, right? Like either you fight someone or you fly and you leave. You can have that same system activated just from constantly being under stress. And when we think about what happened with Black people during COVID, we had minorities were more likely to die disproportionately from COVID. Minorities were more likely to be essential workers and still have to go to work. Minorities were more likely to not be able to quarantine properly because they didn't have the number of spaces within their house, especially in certain congested urban city centers like New York City, for example, or like Los Angeles. And what ends up happening is during this time, we've been in a pandemic for almost 2 years now, come next month. And you've seen this amount of people die consistently around you. Or you've seen this amount of people get sick consistently around you. It puts your body in a consistent stress. Then you also see that you have to go back to work. A lot of us weren't able to stay home and quarantine like we wanted to. So we had to be on the front lines in some way, shape, or form, whether that meant that you were a direct care provider and you were in a hospital or going to see patients in their home, or you were a teacher, or you were somebody who drove for the buses, like we have MTA in New York City, or anything that you had to do, you delivered food, anybody that was essential for your city to continue to run. You had to consistently put yourself at stress. And putting yourself at stress consistently puts you at risk to developing high blood pressure, to developing high cholesterol, to developing potential heart attacks. And when we're living under this consistent stress without proper therapy, and then especially a lot of us feel more comfortable seeing providers that look like us across the board. And if you have limited access to providers that look like you, you're less likely to trust the provider that you come in contact with. On top of, during this time, a lot of providers also switch to telehealth, and you're not getting the same type of interaction that you would have in person. You're leaving people untreated, undiagnosed, right? Because it's going undetected. And we have these issues. So, sorry, I'm just looking in the chat to see if anybody wrote anything. So when we have this, it's one of the reasons why we are being continuously at risk for heart disease. And then it goes even worse that we don't necessarily know what to look at when it comes to heart disease. And one of the biggest reasons we don't know is because we don't necessarily we're less likely to have primary care providers. We're less likely to follow up with our primary care providers, especially as men. My demographic as Black men, we are at the bottom of the list in terms of actually going to see a provider, actually following up with a provider. So I know that we are at the highest of risk when it comes to that. And really, we wanted to have that conversation, but I'm more than just have the conversation. I wanted to be able to answer questions because I know it's not all the time that you get a primary care provider who deals with hypertension, who comes from neighborhoods that you come from and can answer questions that you have. So I wanted to open it up right now about any questions that you may have. You can throw it in the chat and then I'll answer it. You said we have a question?
Yes, we do. So Torsia Child said, when I had COVID, I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, something I never had before. I no longer have high blood pressure, but I am urged to take the pills. I don't understand. If I no longer have high blood pressure, do you think I should continue? And I'm guessing she's referring to the pills.
Taking the pills, right? So that's it depends, right? So sometimes we can have high blood pressure, and if we get on pills, we're not having high blood pressure because we're not on the pills no more, right? I mean, because we're on the pills, and that's what's not necessarily masking it, but that's what's treating the high blood pressure, which is exactly what we wanted to do as a provider. However, it also depends on the cause. I always tell people, treat the cause and don't treat the symptoms. So if you having COVID was the cause of you of developing high blood pressure, if you being stressed during that time of COVID, before COVID, was the cause of you having high blood pressure, then you getting over it would mean that high blood pressure would also reverse. So what I would do if I was you, honestly, is have a conversation with my provider about wanting to come off the medication. At that point, y'all can come up with a plan about weaning you off the medication, because you shouldn't just stop. Because I'm not sure what medication you're on. If you throw it in the chat, then I'll break it down for you. But having a conversation about weaning it off, and then doing things like taking your blood pressure every morning when you wake up, and then taking your blood pressure every night, writing it down, right? And keeping a log of it, and then going to see your provider with that log. So you can say, hey, I'm off the high blood pressure medication, but this is what it is, right? This is what I'm having, and this is what it looks like. And then that way, if you can come off of it without having high blood pressure, then you can come off of it and don't have a problem. Also, I'd be interested to know what was your blood pressure when they diagnosed you with it? And there is something, I see something in the chat from Essence that I'll read. I honestly don't have any questions because I lived through everything mentioned. Growing up in the inner city as a child, the food that was available around us wasn't healthy. It wasn't until I moved out as an adult and was able to choose my diet is when I started eating healthier. I changed my job, and now I have stress less. I went from law enforcement to information technology and working from home. Stress levels have been extremely low. It is definitely about environment, right? And that's a huge thing. It's honest. Often tell people stress will do a lot of things to you. We often say high blood pressure is the silent killer, and I often say stress is the deadliest silent killer, because a lot of times we either don't know we're going through stress, or B, the worst thing that we can possibly do is we normalize stress, right? We say, oh, it's okay because this just comes with the territory. And it's not, it shouldn't. You shouldn't be stressful in the jobs that you are doing, in the work and service that you are provided. It shouldn't be stressful. Now, can it be stressful at times? Yes, but it should not be consistently stressful. Patricia asks, at what numbers do you think you should be medicated? This is a great question, Patricia. I'm glad you asked this. So to understand the numbers with blood pressure, you have to understand that society creates, people at one time created the standard numbers for everything in healthcare, meaning what is a normal sugar level if you have diabetes, what is a normal blood pressure, what is a normal cholesterol. Everything had these normal levels created. So if I told you that a lot of these numbers that were created was created back in the 40s or the 50s or the 60s, who would you think that these numbers were created based upon? If you guessed that they were based upon white males, you would be absolutely correct, because they was thought of as the highest of beings or the perfect of beings. Women weren't thought of as equal. Minorities weren't thought of as equal. So these numbers weren't based upon them, or studies and research weren't done on them. So you take that and then we move into specific blood pressure. So there's two different organizations that set up blood pressure standards. One is JNC, which is the Joint National Convention, which was a group of people that was put together to create a standard on blood pressure. The other one was ANA, American Heart Association. As providers, we can go by either or. I go by JNC 8 because it's more lenient. Give an example. American Heart Association says anybody with a blood pressure over 120/75 is classified as having high blood pressure, right? Me specifically, I don't like that at all. I like the regular numbers of less than 140/90 because some people function better at higher blood pressure levels. That's just how it is. Also, there was some controversy saying that some people that created the AHA numbers might have had some influence from pharmaceutical companies, because the lower level I have to determine who has blood pressure, the more likely I am to put you on blood pressure medication, right? And also that 140/90, that's for people that's 50 and younger. People who are 50 and above, we let them go up to 150/90, right? Because having high blood pressure isn't the issue. It's if you have damage within your organs, meaning if you're having palpitations and you have high blood pressure, your heart is being damaged, right? If you develop a murmur and you have high blood pressure, your heart is being damaged. We're worried. If you have kidney disease and you have high blood pressure, your kidneys are being damaged. We're worried about that. But if you just have high blood pressure and none of your organs are being affected, that's actually okay, right? So those are the numbers for that. And so pretty much with JNC8, we'll start medicating people if they go above that 140/90. For me personally, and just in case nobody ever told you that, I can't see you for the first time and diagnose you with high blood pressure. I have to see you at least 2 different times, at least 1 month apart, and both times consecutively, your blood pressure has to be over 140/90. Right? And with both times it happened to be 140/90, I would then do what we call therapeutic lifestyle modifications, meaning I'll first tell you weight loss, which is I want you to lose 10% of your weight when you were diagnosed with high blood pressure, but I want you to lose it over 6 months. And we could also talk about what that looks like, because I often tell providers, you can't tell somebody to go exercise and lose weight and not define exactly what you mean by exercise and how they should exercise. Joanne asked a question. She said, you should take their blood pressure in the morning. Do you take it before you eat or after you eat? Before you eat. Anytime they ask you to do anything in the morning, first thing in the morning, is before you eat, right? And the reason is because a lot of us have our coffee in the morning. Your coffee might forcefully spike your blood pressure up for a quick minute. We don't want you taking it after that or eating food. So you take it first thing in the morning. And we say first thing in the morning because it lets us know how your pressure is while you've been sleeping. Essence also said exactly just like BMI. Yes, BMI, which is body mass index, is a very interesting concept because it solely goes on height and weight. So if I tell you I can take a bunch of athletes right now, right, that practice twice a day, work out all the time, weight lift, everything. And according to what the BMI standards are, they will be diagnosed as obese. But they're some of the most fit people that you will see, right? And that's because the numbers don't really matter. So I don't look at BMI as much as I look at what we call central obesity, which is the weight that you have around your stomach. More questions? I like these questions. Please keep asking. You can ask whatever you want. Nothing is off bounds. It's out of bounds, I should say.
I actually have a question. This is Crystal. So being in the education profession, of course, we're seeing what's going on in the news these days with teachers leaving left and right. And I'm wondering, are professionals starting to see a trend in certain professions in terms of people being diagnosed with blood pressure or any other cardiac diseases. So I myself, within some time in the pandemic, ended up being diagnosed with blood pressure as well. So are we seeing a rise in teachers getting it? Are we seeing a rise in health professionals who, like you said, are on the front line getting it? What trends are professionals starting to see?
So the way research actually works is that research tends to lag behind what's actually going on, meaning we're not able to collect research data in real time, right? Like it's going to lag 1, 2, 3, 4 years behind of when everything's actually happened. I wouldn't doubt that we are seeing that trend. And that's also a twofold problem. One, I wouldn't doubt it because during this time, especially during this pandemic, we keep being told to do less and less of things. So we're sitting around more, right? And there's a saying that sitting is actually the new smoking, meaning sitting down often is as deadly as smoking, right? So we're sitting down more because we can't go outside, or we're sitting down more because we're doing Zoom all the time and that's the way we work. You're going to put yourself at more health risk. Then also you still have the stress that we talked about during COVID. And then the second fold of that problem is that people that come from our communities that work in these essential jobs, one of the biggest reasons they're less likely to go see providers is because every time I go see a primary care provider, I have to take a personal day off of work, right? Especially if I end up being diagnosed with high blood pressure and I have to go every 3 months to go see my provider, right? That means 4 times out of the year, I have to lose a personal day because most providers don't have even hours and they don't have weekend hours. So I have to go see you during the middle of the day when I'm supposed to be working. Now, let's say you also work an essential job where taking a day off means you just don't get paid. You're definitely less likely to go see a provider if that's the case. All right, actually, yep, I'll do that one first and then I'll go up. How does belly fat impact your health? So it can impact your health in different ways. And the reason why we look at that lower belly fat is really because that's what we call central obesity. And that's what we want to measure, because when you have that belly fat, that tends to not be healthy weight. If you have somebody that works out and they have a lot of muscular weight, right? Like that's good weight because they're working out and they're wearing, and it's healthy, it's not going to harm them. The weight one comes into effect with causing high cholesterol. It comes into effect with causing clogging of your arteries, right? Like those things we have a problem with when we do that. And then we had, hold on. Sure.
So Essence asks, have you seen high blood pressure cases more with Black men or Black women?
So here's the funny thing, right? The research says Black women. And I often tell my students, I tell patients that I see this. One of the things that I am, and it's just my personal theory, right? Like this is just a Dr. J theory. One of the reasons why we see it more in Black women than we do Black men is because Black women do a phenomenal job of seeking help or taking care of themselves. So y'all are more likely to go see a doctor, right? To go see a provider if something's wrong. Black men tend to be, when you find out something's wrong, it's because they're laying on their deathbed, right? Or it's because they can't do nothing else. So we may both be having the same occurrence, but if I don't go to get diagnosed, it's going to look like my numbers are much lower than yours. Okay. So Tosha said, I stopped taking the pills a year ago, but they still send the pills to my drugstore. The name of it is hydrochlorothiazide. So hydrochlorothiazide is a water pill, right? Which just means that normally the more water you drink, the more you're going to go to the bathroom. The more you go to the bathroom and urinate, the more weight you are getting off of your body, right? Like it's just a theory that as you drop weight, your blood pressure drop along with it. 12.5 milligrams is the lowest possible dose of hydrochlorothiazide. And I'll tell you this, Tosha, if you had been on this medication off of this medication for a year, for 6 months, for 3 months, and your blood pressure is still normal, you need to talk to your provider about stopping sending this to your pharmacy, right? Because all that's really happening is they're sending it to the pharmacy so the pharmacy could get paid by billing your insurance. So you need to stop that immediately. You can tell your provider that, and they can discontinue it in your system, because there's no reason they should still be sending this to you if you are not taking it. On top of, if you don't have blood pressure, you don't want this on your prescription portfolio. And what I mean by this is, when you go get life insurance, one of the things they do is run your prescription history. And all the medications that's on your prescription history, then you are diagnosed with anything that is related to that, which will also increase your premium.
Wow, you're having people saying you're giving a lot of amazing facts, and the questions are coming in. So I just want to, because I know the chat jumps up. So Linda Holly says, how can remote work impact your health, physical and mental? And then we'll jump to the next question.
Yeah, so physically it impacts it because you're sitting more. And as we said, sitting is the new smoking, right? So we try to tell people, you want to get up at least every 30 to 40 minutes, even if it's just to get up, stand up, stretch, walk 10 feet, come back and sit back down, right? Like, it's just, you want to get your body moving. So that impacts you. Mentally, it can also impact you because you're not getting human touch. So one of the things we talk about, remember when I said before we do pharmaceutical treatments, we do what's called therapeutic lifestyle modifications. One of the crucial things in therapeutic lifestyle modification is community engagement. Because if I can get you in a community that makes you feel like they care about you, they're keeping track of your numbers, they're keeping track of you working out, taking your medications, you're more likely to have buy-in and continue to do it. So if I take that away from you by consistently being on Zoom, and don't get me wrong, nothing's wrong with being on Zoom. I'm just saying, if you can mix that in with community engagement from your family, from your friends, but you still need that community engagement, that's how that can impact you. Exactly true. Has there been a connection to endorphins and stress and high blood pressure, or neurological waves and high blood pressure? I hope that makes sense. Yes, it makes sense. There has been a direct connection between stress and high blood pressure. Your endorphins can be released for different reasons, right? So I'm going to specifically say stress. There has been a direct correlation, right? And not just correlation, because we have this saying in research of correlation does not mean causation, right? And by that, what I mean is there is a correlation between ice cream trucks and murder, but it does not mean that ice cream trucks cause murder. It just means that ice cream trucks come out during the summertime and more people tend to get killed during the summertime. So they're correlated, but there's no causation. There is causation between stress and high blood pressure, causation between stress and heart attacks, right? So all of those, we have to keep correlation between stress, high blood pressure, and stroke as well. Rumors about negative long-term effects of blood pressure medication, right? So there are good effects, and there's always going to be some form of, not always, a lot of times there's some form of negative effects, right? Or what we call side effects of medication. Sometimes they're very short, and then sometimes they can be longer. For the most part, when we say do the risk outweigh the benefits, right? It means that, so for example, when we talked about hydrochlorothiazide earlier in the chat, and that'd be a water pill. One of the side effects of that is that you're going to have to go to the bathroom often. And some people get upset because they have to go to the bathroom at nighttime, which is when I tell them you should take that in the morning because it stays in your system for 12 hours. So if you take it at 8 a.m., it'll be out your system at 8 p.m. and you can sleep for the rest of the night without urinating. But if it's, for some people, there's also a side effect of water pills where you can't fully get an erection for men. So for some men, that's not worth it. We will switch them off to a different medication for that, like an ACE or an ARB. But for the most part, the medications that have been approved, all of their benefits outweigh the risks of that. But some of the side effects that can happen is, if you're on water pills for too long, and I'm talking about years upon years upon years, you can start having some kidney side effects. But if you're on these medications, your provider should be getting at at the very least, yearly labs on you so that they're monitoring it. And if there's an issue, they're switching you off of it to something else. And if that didn't answer your question and you want to ask more about that, please definitely do. Can you pull these questions from the chat? Report later. Should it be good to record? Go down. Sorry.
Can you repeat the healthy blood pressure ranges as you age?
Yes. So healthy blood pressure range in general, and this is according to JNC, is 140/90. And what that means is that your top number, what we call systolic, that's 140, right? Meaning we don't want you to go above that. Your bottom number, what we call diastolic, and a simple way to remember this is step down, right? You always step down. Step, systolic, down, diastolic. So the top number, 140, bottom number, 90. You don't want to go over 140 on the top. You don't want to go over 90 on the bottom. As you age, as you get over 50, we allow that top number to go from 140 to 150, right? Because when we try to cause tighter control in elderly, or not elderly, in the older population, what happens is that they have more side effects, right? The people who are most at risk to having side effects is actually the elderly.
All right, another question. Essence asks, I like to work out, but I'm always looking for ways to switch up my workouts. What workouts are particularly good for the heart? Get the heart rate up. Note, I've been doing burpees and jumping jacks, but I'm looking for something else, if possible, that incorporates body weight since I don't have access to gym equipment.
I would say this, and it depends on what you can afford, right? So for those of you who can't afford it, I would say I just brought a tunnel, TONAL, which is, it's like a full home gym, but it's not bulky. It goes on a wall, right? Like, meaning if you can see the space of this wall behind me, and actually what I may do is, since we can be remote, so if you can afford it, right? Everybody can afford it, but if you can, this is great because of everything that happens and goes along with it. If not, other things that you can do with your body weight, the burpees is good because it's your body weight. Push-ups are good because it's your body weight. Running, anything that's going to increase your weight tends to be, not your weight, anything that increases your heart rate is good, right? So, if you buy weights at home and you do workout regimens, like you can even go on YouTube to do workout regimens, which helps a lot. So when I said the tunnel, this is the whole entire tunnel right here. All right. It comes on. It's a whole workout machine. And it doesn't take up a lot of space at all, which I love, right? So if that's something that you can afford, that's great. I would say go with it. If it's something that you can't afford, then working at home, what we really want to do, more importantly than working out somewhere specifically, is you want to do 150 minutes a week, at least, right? That can be, I tell moms who have young children or parents who have young children, even if that means doing 20 minutes a day when they go to sleep, that's fine. If that means doing 30 minutes 5 times a week, it's fine. If that means 3 times a week, you do 50 minutes, that's fine. Just get in your 150 minutes, right? I also tell them you don't want to go more than 2 days without activity, without exercising, right? That's another important thing. Don't go more than 2 days without it.
Dr.
And then yes.
I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure because the second part may help some other people. She said she's looking for workouts to do in her hotel room because she's away at military training. And this may be helpful for those that do travel for work and they want to get their workout, but they're in a hotel room.
Okay. So some of that, well, if you have military training, you should be getting all of the exercise and training that you need. But push-ups, burpees, sit-ups, and it's also just doing it back to back to back to back, right? And trying to limit the rest time you have in between. But doing that will increase your heart rate if you do it back to back to back. Like there's some people that they lift weights like I have a cousin that he's a trainer, but he doesn't do running like miles, sprints. He just lifts at a consistent pace and it raises up his heart rate. So doing anything that you do at a back-to-back pace will lift it up. And okay, did I miss anybody else questions?
We're looking through. We just want to give those that are in the audience a few more minutes to take advantage of some free, powerful, and impactful health tips. So if there's a burning question, even when you brought up about the belly fat, if something else outside of blood pressure popped into your mind, please take advantage. We do have Dr. Johnson here for a few more minutes. You don't want to say you walked away.
Yep. And Janae said it as well. YouTube have great workouts that you can do, and it's for free, right? Download the YouTube app or log on to youtube.com and just search in workouts at home. And it's a bunch of trainers that give you different workouts that you can do at home.
Oh, we have a question representing, thank you, Alicia Lundy, asking, she gave you the stats there, if you need me to read it off. Male, 57 years old with 130 over 80 blood pressure and taking
amlodipine.
Yeah,
I see
5
it.
milligrams.
Yeah, so amlodipine is what we call as an ARB, angiotensin receptor blocker. So if your blood pressure is 130 over 80, it depends. Is it 130 over 80 because he's taken that 5 milligrams of amlodipine? Because that can be very much possible. If it's 130 over 80, even when he doesn't take it, then me professionally, I would say no, because it's less than that, 140 over 90. And then they said, my blood pressure is usually 136 over 70. Why am I on medication? And again, that also depends. It's because some people, their blood pressure is only normal because it is because they're taking that medication, right? And then there's some people who their blood pressure, if your blood pressure is less than 140 over 90, and again, because the bigger thing than your blood pressure is the other things that's going on. When I run your kidney levels, are there issues with your kidney levels? When I look at an EKG, do you have dysrhythmias or problems within your heart? When I look at, that's the EKG, that's when I look at anything, like, do you have diabetes, right? Do you, like, what are the different things that you may have? Because sometimes there may be a patient that has diabetes, and because your blood pressure is borderline, I may put you on an amlodipine or a lisinopril because it helps protect your kidneys. Right. So you may not have high blood pressure, but you're at the borderline, and I need to protect your kidneys because you're also on, because you also have diabetes. But these are things that your providers should be breaking down and explaining to you. It should never just feel like you go somewhere, they throw something at you, and then they tell you to get out. It's the generic correlations to high blood pressure. Yes. So Joni asks, yes, there is some genetic correlations to some. But also, I will go back to what I said in the beginning, where it's also deeper than genetics. I rule in genetics when I rule out everything else, meaning sometimes people look at it as, oh, 3 generations of this family has all had high blood pressure, but 3 generations of that family all grew up in the same area and had the same exact food options and all had the same income. So they all end up making the same choices. If I can remove them out of that and then they still have high blood pressure when they make healthy choices, then it's genetics. Yes, Essence, you are absolutely on the right track. Absolutely. What is the blood pressure range for somebody over 80? 150, less than 150 over 90, normal. And have you had many cases of high blood pressure in children, let's say middle school or elementary school? No, I don't. But if we come across high blood pressure in child, that's an automatic referral to a specialist because children shouldn't have it. I will say this, because this is something that I see with the New York City kids as well. So children should be exercising at least 60 minutes a day, meaning they should have some form of physical activity. When I was growing up, that just means that At lunch and recess, they opened up the basketball courts and outside and told us to run until you couldn't run no more. But it was exercise because we got to run, play, do everything. The women jump double dutch, a whole bunch of things. New York City now, a lot has become split with charter schools and public schools. And there's some schools that don't have recess every day, or they may not have gym every day, right? It may alternate. And when you do that, it decreases the child's time of physical activity, or they may be able to substitute out gym with like some type of skills training, which I do think is still great. But you may not get that same 60 days of activity that you need, because that's the most important thing. Eating healthy is great. You still need that activity part.
Yes, that was my thing, because looking at the way education is now, I don't know any school in my area that has recess outside of maybe like pre-K, Head Start, things like that. Once they get into middle school, it's pretty much a wrap. And then, of course, the students these days are so caught up in being on their phone, social media, Fortnite, everything else. And for the gym requirements or things like that, that's up to the school. It may be a quarter class, it may be a semester class. So nothing where they're really getting activity on a regular basis other than the walking that they do transitioning to class. So that's why I asked.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And somebody asked a great question.
Yeah.
Is the All of Us research program doing any active research projects from the data collected from partners? How can joining All of Us assist with precision health? So yes, they're doing different projects that they look at from collecting your data. Also, more importantly, it is on, like I often tell, it's on providers like myself and my organization, like the National Black Nursing Association or the National Medical Association, which is the Black doctors, right? The National Association of Hispanic Nurses. It's on us as well to come up with some of these research projects to look at and do certain projects on it so we can see and understand our people, right? And then we can share that information with them. So that directly leads into how can it assist with precision health. So precision health is really about what we call individualizing healthcare, meaning being able to say, in this constituency of Black people, right? In this constituency of African Americans that migrated from down south to up north, or African Americans born and raised in the South versus Caribbean Americans versus Africans, or versus this Caribbean island. Really being able to break things down like that so we can see if there's a difference, and if it's genetic, right? If it's just, of course, across Black people, or if it's across where you live in America, right? Like being able to break things down like that. Because for a lot of people, a lot of minorities and disadvantaged groups do not sign up for research. So we're not included in that research, right? So when you have things like, I had a friend whose father had an aneurysm, which is when a large vessel in your body is splitting, right? And the thing we want to do is lower your blood pressure when that comes. And every time they lowered his blood pressure to under 140/90, he passed out in a hospital bed. Every time they raised it and it was 160/100, he was up, awake, fine, and everything. And what they had to rediscover was that he normally functions at a higher blood pressure. And there's some people and some groups of people who function at higher levels. So even when I'm doing things like with diabetes, I'll tell my providers, if you titrate their diabetes level down so low to the point where it looks like they're having low sugar, we call it hypoglycemia. It looks like they're having that, even if they levels read normal, you need to titrate it back up. You need to individualize it. So precision health helps us individualize healthcare, which is what we need as well.
Thank you so much. And Alicia has asked, do you have a doctor referral list of doctors outside of New York? And so I'll let you answer that.
So at this moment, I don't. But my goal is by the end of this year to build that kind of network. Because every time I do a talk like this, people always ask me, are you taking patients? Can I come see you? How can I see you? How can we make this happen? So two of my healthcare goals at the end of this year is one, creating my podcast, my video podcast show called House Calls with Dr. J, where I go to people's homes and talk to them about issues like this for people to see. And then the second one is creating that network so people can go, oh, I live in Georgia, I live in LA, I live in this area. These are the recommended Black providers that I want to go see.
Awesome, awesome. Well, you already have a high demand for it. So in your spare time, when you're not coaching the Seahawks, you could get started on that directory. So we want to thank you for kicking off our Health is Wealth 2.0 series. So if you have the reactions button, you can pretend we're giving you spirit fingers. And we just wanted to share our flyer for those that may be on. And this is open to everyone. So I know we heard from a lot of ladies, but men are always welcome as well. And so next week, we're really excited. It's Valentine's Day. And we are having a live demonstration of a healthy meal, cooking with love on the 21st. We're talking about our mind, our mental health. And to close us out, a little bit of yoga. So Essence, make sure in that hotel room, you log in for that free yoga. And so I just wanted to show, we are also highlighting, today we heard from an amazing Black nurse practitioner. Next week, our chef is also from the tri-state area, and it's going to be awesome. We will send out the shopping list. So if you feel up to cooking for you, your boo, or whoever, because it is Valentine's Day, we encourage you. On the screen, and also Crystal placed it in the chat, we like to do a post survey just to see, have you learned anything new? But some of you are returners. And if you are in the New York, Jersey area, I am also putting in the chat, this is what's next. I've been to all of us amazing events, and I may be considering I want to enroll. And so this link allows you to get your questions answered about enrollment. And so next week, if you come and cook with us, we actually have one of our representatives from the New York HPO speaking to us about what happens when you click join all of us and you're ready to enroll. So without further ado, we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Have an amazing night. And we hope to see you, if not next week, at one of the upcoming Mondays. I'll turn it over to Crystal at this time.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for being with us again for Health is Wealth 2.0. Another amazing session, as always. We hope to see everyone next week. And then again, yes, please complete the post survey. It is very brief, just like the pre-survey. So you can either take a picture of the QR code, or I am placing in the chat again. But those that stated that you needed to register, I believe once you did your initial registration, you could choose which events you wanted, but feel free to register again just to make sure that you are on the email list to receive the ingredients for next week's session. So again, we definitely appreciate everyone joining us tonight. We know that you gathered some great information, and we look forward to seeing you the rest of the Mondays in February.
And Dr. Johnson, you could tell your brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi they could join us for cooking next week, the 14th. I forgot that in your bio as well.
I'll tell them that. That's not a problem. Yo to the news.